Guten Tag, WAP. This is Mr. Linegar. Let's make history today as we go over Unit 4, Day 3. We're going to talk about Africa and Asia after World War I, promises kept, and mostly promises ignored, and what was going on with them after World War I. Let's get started with our daily punishment. The machine at the coin factory suddenly stopped working with no explanation. It doesn't make any sense. Key terms for today: Indian National Congress, BG Talak, All India Muslim League, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Mahatma Gandhi, the Wahhabis, the Arab Mandates, and the Indian Salt March. We're going to go over India after World War I, Middle East after World War I, and Africa after World War I. So there is going to be an increase of nationalism in Africa and Asia after World War I. A lot of these areas fought for the Allies. They sent soldiers. They were impacted by World War I. They were made promises that they would be eventually given independent. And then in the Treaty of Versailles, they were ignored. Let's start off with India. We talked before about the Indian National Congress. This was created in the 1880s. It was a regional association of Western educated Indians led by Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi. They formed the Indian National Congress in 1885. They wanted to present their grievances towards the British. Most of their issues concerned the Indian elite, not the poor. There will be some more militants in India that did not want to do the more peaceful, slow process of the Indian National Congress. They were led by the Hindu nationalist, BG Talak. He's going to emphasize Hinduism. He's going to urge boycotts and violence against the British. His conservative Hinduism is going to frighten the moderates, the Muslims, and the Sikhs, and he will eventually be exiled. Also during this time, the All India Muslim League will be formed, and it'll be led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. This was founded in 1906 to represent Muslim interests. They wanted independence as well, but they wanted there to be a partition in India. They wanted there to be a northern Muslim Indian state, which will eventually become Pakistan. During this time in the early 1900s, Gandhi is going to become the leader of the Indian National Congress. He realized that India played a significant role in World War I. Wartime inflation is going to reduce the standards of living amongst the Indian peasants. There's going to be famine. During the war, in the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, Indians were promised reforms and more self-government. This is going to be offset by the Rowlatt Act, which is going to limit Indian civil liberties. All these frustrations are going to lead to the rise of Gandhi. He's going to build a nationwide protest movement against British colonialism. Both the peasants and the middle class support his leadership. He'll do nonviolent civil disobedience, which will influence latter-day people like Martin Luther King Jr. He'll do civil resistance. He was considered acceptable to both radicals and moderate nationalists. As a Hindu mystic, he could mobilize widespread support for his movement. He's going to do things like boycotts, the Salt March, the homespun movement, where he has the Indians make their own textile clothing so they don't have to buy from the British. And he's going to, he'll also do hunger strikes, and he's going to pressure the British that way through his nonviolence. The biggest event he does was in 1930. It's called the Dandi Satyagraha, the Salt March. This was an example of nonviolent civil disobedience. At this time, the British had a monopoly on salt, so whenever the Indians wanted salt, they would have to pay the tax to the British, which would support the British Empire. The Salt March is going to be led by Gandhi. From March to April 1930 was a campaign against the salt tax. The Indians, Gandhi and his followers will walk 10 miles a day to get to the Indian Ocean, where they can get salt directly from the Indian Ocean, and they don't have to buy from the British. This Salt March is going to really push the Indian independence movement, and it's going to lead to large-scale civil disobedience, which for the most part will be very peaceful. Let's talk about nationalism in other parts of the world. After World War I, the Ottoman rule is going to collapse. You're going to have Turkey being created from the center of the Ottoman Empire in Anatolia. And Turkey will become a country in 1922. Turkey will begin the process of westernization, modernization of the Turkish state and culture. It'll give massive liberties granted to women. It'll be the first country to do that in the Middle East. It will be led by Ataturk, who was a hero during the World War I, fighting for the Ottoman Empire, but he's going to become the father of Turkey. In Arabia, Arabia used to be part of the Ottoman Empire. It will break off during World War I. It'll fight for the Allies. The major Muslim leaders in Arabia were called the Wahhabis. They were strict Sunni Muslims. They were puritanical religious fanatics. They wanted to cleanse Islam of all foreign influence. They're going to ally with a major family in Arabia called the Sauds, and they're going to create the country of Saudi Arabia. Get it? Saud Arabia? Saudi Arabia. And the Wahhabists will have a lot of power there as well. If you remember from last unit, the British occupied Egypt after the Mahdist revolt. In order to forestall more violent national movements, the British will grant Egypt a new constitution. They'll allow parliamentary representation. However, when World War I broke out, the British will suspend the constitution and impose martial law. There'll be a revolt in Egypt against the British in 1919. The British will declare martial law. It'll impose greater hardships on the peasantry. The British will refuse to allow the Egyptian delegation to attend the Treaty of Versailles. This will touch off a rebellion, but the British will regain control of Egypt. By this time, the British kind of realize that they're not going to be able to hold on to Egypt. So from 1922 to 1936, the British are going to slowly pull their soldiers out of Egypt. They'll keep some soldiers in the Suez Canal zone, though. Let's talk about the Arab mandates. The Triple Entente promised Arab countries that fought against the Ottoman Empire independence. They are going to break these promises. The Arabs expected independent Arab states. Instead, the Treaty of Versailles is going to create artificial states within the League of Nations called mandates. They'll be placed under control of the British and French because they didn't think the Arab countries were ready for independence. The Allied countries were supposed to prepare these countries for independence. The French are just going to loot them for their resources. The British moderately will try to prepare them for independence. In Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon, the Arabs are going to resist the mandate system. There'll be resistance to the mandate system. The British will eventually put one of their client kingdoms, one of their clients, as the king of Iraq, the Hashemite king, and Iraq will become an independent country. Palestine was promised to the Jews in the Balfour Declaration as an independent country. This upset the Arabs, so they're going to avoid doing anything one way or another to prevent any more further anger. So the Balfour Declaration will also be ignored at this time. Similar things are going to happen in Africa, guys. During World War I, most Western educated African elites will remain loyal to the colonial government. After the war, the European countries are going to keep very few of the promises for economic improvement or self-government. This is going to lead to strikes and civil disobedience. Remember, Africa is going to have a smaller middle class than India. The British, for example, will not provide schools for the Africans because they saw how that in India, a lot of those schools led to leaders who supported independence. So there will be a smaller independence movement. And unlike India, African countries really won't get their independence until after World War II, 1950s and 1960s for the most part. But you are going to start to see nationalist movements appear in Africa in the 1920s. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. Until next time, deuces. Deuces, deuces. Yeah.